So, as you know, the Pope's condition is worsening. What are your thoughts currently?
Well, I think, as with many Catholics, my thoughts are just to pray with the Holy Father and be in communion with him because um, as with any sort of death in the family, death often brings family together. And so I think as we pray for the Holy Father and whatever God's will is for his life or death, it's a time of communion with him and with all the other Catholics in the world. So it's a remarkable moment of bringing us all together in a strange, beautiful way.
I know there are prayers happening in churches all across the globe today. What does that prayer look like, and what should people be praying for, you think?
The prayers I think most Catholics are praying today, as am I, are, thy will be done. Well done, thy good and faithful servant. All those wonderful words that we hear as the faithful near death and as we celebrate life at funerals. Those are the prayers and the words that are top of mind, I think, for most of us. Pope Francis, the Holy Father, has lived a good long life and has given his all to the Lord, and so it's a sad thing, but it's also a beautiful thing, and so it's a strange mix of gratitude and sadness that is what it means to be a person of faith.
In these situations, there's a lot of talk about possible resignation before passing. Um, are you aware of how this process works now as we come into the final days, possibly?
I think I think we think about resignations because of what Pope Benedict XVI did in resigning, but he was the first person to do it in several centuries. At this point, it wouldn't make a difference, as far as I can tell, for the Holy Father to resign now, because, as Saint John Paul II showed us in his death, the Holy Father teaches the faithful and the world about the beauty of death, and so this is, I think, his um, final, teaching to the rest of us on how to cherish every living being, even at that vulnerable moment of death. So resigning just wouldn't be useful.
And obviously, as you said, that will be done, and at his time. But we have to ask about legacy, the legacy that Pope Francis will have. What do you think that is?
Well, the legacy of Pope Francis, I think, as with any pope, will be um, uh, tested over time and over the centuries. For me, the Holy Father, what I love about Pope Francis is how he constantly nudges me and pokes me and pushes me to the margins, to the vulnerable. Is a voice that resounds across the globe to remember the smallest, the weakest, the most vulnerable, those who are at the bottom of the supply chains for the rest of us, the migrant. He is a resounding, powerful voice for the dignity of every human being, and to insist upon that so thoroughly as Pope Francis has done from the moment he became Pope, makes me uncomfortable sometimes, makes us uncomfortable sometimes, and so for me, his legacy will be a legacy of of challenge, to challenge us to take the truth of Jesus uh, uh, all the way down, not just in the bits that we like. Oh, I'm not hearing you.
A lot of people struggled with his message. Why do you
Hmm.
think so? He challenged the traditionalist.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think, you, you struggle with Pope Francis's message because, as I said, it is so thorough, and Jesus says some rather um, startling things about wealth and possessions and how to see and treat the poor. He echoes Luke's gospel, which is a challenging text, with such clarity that for those of us who are very blessed to live in this wonderful, comfortable Western world, he was a voice that said, remember those who made this world beautiful, and and that's a challenging thing, and so I think, to be fair, that's why some have brushed against some of the more challenging things the Pope has said, and that's, for me, that's a good thing, you know.
He was not afraid to get into the foray of some topics that are very polarizing.
Mhm. Right.
Um, and I don't know if that's just his Jesuit nature or just his personal nature or his human nature. What do you think it was?
I think a little bit of both. I think that there definitely is the Jesuit about him, which puts him smack in the center of the mix, in the most vital conflicts of our society. I think his personal nature, with this awareness of um, human dignity in every corner of life, from the slums of South America to the palaces of Europe. I mean, and so he brings all of that with him, and I think that is what, in my view, I think that's what made him so electric in every room he walked in, right? Because he would remind comfortable people like me of my responsibility to the poorest people I choose not to see. He reminded the political elite their duty for a just society, and so yeah, that's a Jesuit talking, and that's um, him talking, and it's such a beautiful witness that I give thanks for, to be honest.
You know, it's hard for us because we put everything in our own Western world political context, right? When it comes to the Pope, but the Holy Father is a global, global icon here. Um, but there were always times where, you know, listen, I went to Gonzaga, so I'm Jesuit educated, and so I'd be like, no way, there's no way the Pope said that, and then I have to go back and I'd read and be like, oh, the Pope did say that, and I'm like, applaud the Pope, applaud, Catholics everywhere, but some people didn't see it that way.
Well, I think, it's a good way to read any pope in the modern world, and that is to go to the source beyond the headlines. Um, Not because the media has a problem, but more that the papal voice is deeply contextual, and so when a pope or Pope Francis speaks on a moral matter or an ethical matter, you will hear echoes of centuries of tradition. You'll hear echoes of the scriptures. It has that type of deep resonance, right? And so, and if you're not immersed in that tradition, it's hard to hear his depth. And then also, as you said, with this Western lens, I mean, and not knocking the Western lens, I have it, but you know, Catholicism is not an American religion. It's not any one nation's religion. It's a global faith. It's a universal faith, and so the Holy Father is the shepherd of all of us, and so we may hear something that is said, that has a different resonance in a different part of the planet, and to be aware of that before one reacts is a necessary thing. And for example, I mean, just Laudato Si, his great encyclical on the environment, which I read when it came out, and in Rome, there's a paragraph in there where Pope Francis said that we in the West should maybe consider giving up central heating and air. And I thought, the Holy Father's never been to Texas. I am not giving up air conditioning, right? But he wasn't talking to me. Maybe he was, and that's where I'm being resistant. But it's a global voice, the Pope's voice, and you always have to understand that.
Let's talk about Bishop Farrell. Did you know him on a personal level?
I did, I did. I knew him well. I know him. Yeah.
And so he's not thrust into this. I mean, he's always been thrust into many positions, but he's not thrust into this position as the Camerlengo. Can for for an audience like ours, yeah, can you explain what this position means?
Yeah, the Camerlengo, Cardinal Farrell's job will be to oversee the conclave, so the election of the next pope. He is charged with running the Holy See, and so really you could say that he does everything that the Pope does, except appoint bishops and write encyclicals. And so he, to put it the simplest way possible, he just uh, holds the fort down until the conclave elects a new pope. It's a wonderfully challenging job, but for those of us who know Cardinal Farrell, especially in Dallas, who worked with him, he's probably the best man for the job. I spoke to him actually a few months ago, and he understands it as a sacred duty, and he'll do a great job.
And excuse me for calling you Bishop. So used to calling you Bishop.
Oh, same. Yeah.
What is it about Cardinal Farrell that would make him a great Camerlengo?
Uh, well, I think he's got an MBA. He knows how to run an organization. We used to say that if Cardinal Farrell wasn't destined to be a priest and a bishop and a cardinal, he might be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He is a wonderful leader, and so I really think he might be the best camera. I didn't know who the Camerlengo was last time, but I couldn't imagine a person doing a better job.
So their job is purely administrative and not. I mean, listen, I watched the movie The Conclave, and Ralph Fiennes ends up being one of the options to be the next
Mhm.
pope. I don't think that's an option here, right?
I don't think so. I don't know, Cardinal Farrell wouldn't wouldn't I guarantee you wouldn't want that job, but uh, I don't see that being a real possibility. And Cardinal Farrell's very grateful for the role that he's been given by the Holy Father, and I think it's a real gift to the Church to be a steady hand in that time of transition. And so um, he's ready, and it'll be a great conclave, I should think.
So Pope Francis appointed him Camerlengo. Is that correct? Is that
I
something?
believe so. Mhm.
What do you think the Pope saw in him that you already knew about
I think I think the Pope did see his administrative skills, which are clear. Cardinal Farrell also has remarkable people skills. He remembers so many people that and he loves. For example, he loves Dallas. He still pays attention to what's going on here. Um, and he's a person of the church. He's a man of the church, and he wants to be Catholic above anything else, and he's not swayed by ideological conflict or political movements. That I've never known Cardinal Farrell to be uh, uh, pushed one way or the other, and so I think it's pure speculation on my part, but I think Pope Francis probably saw a really steady, competent hand.
it? I was here when then Bishop Farrell had sort of led the charge about releasing the list of sexually abusive priests. And he caught a lot of flack from people who are Catholics, but people on the other side, journalists like myself, were like, Wow. I mean, well, what a breath of fresh air. Do you think some of that plays into some of this, his ability to sort of take on really tough tasks?
I think so. Yeah, and he had been a leader in the transparency which lends itself to the ongoing healing process related to those scandals, and there is no guile in Cardinal Farrell. I've known him for well over 10 years now, and um, he just loves the church and wants to do the right thing, and he understands that the church includes not just the ordained, but everybody who calls themselves Catholic, and on top of that, people who aren't Catholic. That famous line of Cardinal Farrell's, we help others not because they're Catholic, but because we're Catholic. And it's a Catholicism to which I still aspire every day, right? And which Bishop Burns just taken the baton and run with it. It's Cardinal Farrell left the Catholic Church in Dallas in a really, really great place, and so I think Pope Francis sees that, saw that, and um, made a good move.
Father, last couple of questions here. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but this college, do you is there a possibility of the next pope being from the Americas, another pope from the Americas? Do you anticipate someone who is of the similar order from the Jesuits, someone who is in similar thinking to um, Pope Francis?
I don't know. That's a good question. I for my own, um, clear thinking, generally try and stay away from the pop-up websites where you can, which cardinal has the best odds to be made pope, because the church repeatedly has surprised us, right? And so, this Polish cardinal all of a sudden, and then Pope Benedict and Pope Francis was definitely out of left field. So who knows, right? I I tend to take a step back and look at the successor of St. Peter in a generational fashion, and I just think that the Lord gives us the Pope that we need when we need it. John Paul II, this great charismatic Pope, just seemed to be the right person in the era of Reagan and Gorbachev and the end of the Cold War. He just seemed to be the right person. Pope Benedict, the great professor and the great theologian, for me, I came into the church under Pope Benedict. His theological brilliance just seemed to be what we needed in the church in that season. And then comes this Jesuit with these fiery words to remember the poor and the marginalized, and to say todos, 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 all. It just seemed to be a beautiful compliment. And so I'm excited to see what's next. I mean, who will it be? I mean, it could be anybody. And but the faith, and this is what I just have been reflecting on recently, and I just think it's beautiful. The faith gives me rest and peace and comfort that we believe as Catholics that the Holy Spirit chooses this person in this time for the work of the kingdom, and so whoever it is, it'll be wonderful.